I never thought betrayal would find its way into my life. I never thought I would be the one holding a truth that could break the very foundation of the world I lived in. Yet, betrayal doesn't knock politely. It doesn't whisper before it enters. It storms in, uninvited, ripping apart the calm you thought was unshakable. It started like any ordinary evening, the kind of evening where comfort hides in the smallest details. The smell of dinner still lingered in the air, the glow of the television flickered softly across the room, and the warm weight of a mug sat steady in my hand. He was across the room, his head bent low, scrolling on his phone as if nothing else mattered. I thought nothing of it, because why would I? We were supposed to be safe, solid. That's what I told myself. But then the silence shifted. A vibration buzzed against the wooden coffee table, just a small sound, but somehow it split the air like thunder. His phone lit up, the screen flashing with a name I didn't recognize. At first, I turned away. Trust, after all, had been the backbone of everything we had. I wanted to believe there was nothing to see. But trust, I would learn that night, can also be a blindfold. And blindfolds are dangerous when someone is walking you straight into fire. The phone vibrated again, a new message sliding into view. My eyes, without my permission, glanced at it. Just a few words, simple, harmless to anyone else, but to me, they burned. Last night was unforgettable. I can't wait again. My heart dropped. My fingers tightened around the mug until it nearly slipped from my hand. My ears rang with the sound of my own pulse, so loud it drowned out everything else. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. In that single moment, the world I thought I knew tilted. The walls of our home, once steady, felt like they were shifting around me. My reality broke, piece by piece the room. I simply sat there frozen, while he kept scrolling, oblivious to the storm he had just unleashed in me. My hands shook, my throat tightened, my mind spun questions that had no answers. Who was she? How long had this been happening? What lies had I swallowed while smiling at him across dinner tables? The man I thought I knew suddenly felt like a stranger who shared my bed, my meals, my dreams. And in that moment, a new truth settled in me. This wasn't just about a message, it was about a secret he thought I'd never find, a secret meant to stay hidden. But I had found it. And with that discovery, my silence was no longer silence. It was the beginning of something bigger, something he never saw coming. That night wasn't just another night in our home. That night was the night my story of betrayal began. The night I stepped into a role I never asked for, but one that I would play with everything in me. Because the truth always has a way of breaking through. And once it does, nothing can ever go back to the way it was.
Looking back, I wonder if the signs were always there. Maybe they weren't hidden at all. Maybe they were right in front of me, waiting for me to open my eyes. But when you love someone, your heart learns to make excuses your mind would never dare to believe. There were little things, small changes I brushed away because I didn't want to admit what they might mean. He used to come home tired but content, happy to tell me about his day. Lately, though, his words felt clipped, like he was rushing through a script. His eyes, those eyes that once searched for mine with warmth, now looked away too quickly, as though meeting my gaze had become too heavy a burden. And then there was his phone. Once left casually on the kitchen counter, now it never left his side. He'd carry it into the bathroom, keep it face down on the table, flinch when it buzzed. I told myself it was work, stress, maybe just the world demanding more of him. But deep down, I knew. The truth whispers before it screams. I remembered the nights when he used to lean close, telling me his plans for the future. We would laugh, dream, talk about vacations we couldn't yet afford, and homes we might one day own. But lately, silence had replaced those dreams. He didn't laugh as easily. He didn't dream out loud anymore. And I told myself, maybe this is just what long-term love feels like. Maybe passion fades. Maybe people grow distant. But no, love doesn't vanish without reason. Distance doesn't appear without cause. I began noticing how he dressed differently, too. He started ironing shirts he once wore carelessly, spraying cologne he had almost forgotten, checking himself in the mirror before leaving the house. I complimented him, trying to believe it was for me, but when he looked at me, it wasn't with the glow of a man trying to impress his partner. It was the look of someone who was already rehearsing for another stage. The cracks in our perfect picture were spreading, and I felt powerless to stop them. At dinners with friends, he played the role of the charming partner, smiling, holding my hand under the table, laughing at my jokes. To everyone else, we looked like the couple who had it all. But I knew, I felt it in the pit of my stomach. When his hand touched mine, it felt rehearsed. When he smiled, it didn't reach his eyes. I remember one night, lying beside him in bed, listening to his steady breathing. I turned my face toward him, studying his profile and the faint glow from the window. He looked peaceful, but I felt like I was staring at a stranger. I wanted to reach out to ask him if he was still mine, but the words never came. Fear held them back. Fear that asking would force the truth into the open before I was ready to face it. And that's when I realized something important. I wasn't ready to confront him yet. Not because I was weak, but because I needed more than suspicion. I needed the truth. I needed proof that couldn't be denied. So I made a choice. I chose silence. But my silence wasn't emptiness. My silence was preparation. I would smile when he smiled. I would nod when he lied. I would play the part of the trusting partner, all the while gathering the pieces of the puzzle he thought I'd never see. Because betrayal has a rhythm. It starts as a whisper, grows into a shadow, and finally reveals itself in the daylight. And I was just beginning to hear the music.
Living with him after discovering the affair was like living with a stranger who wore a familiar face. Every morning I woke up next to him, and every night I went to bed beside him. But something inside me whispered that the man lying there was no longer mine. He belonged to someone else, and yet here he was, sitting across the table from me, smiling at me, speaking to me, touching me, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, at least for me. The smallest things started to feel unbearable. When his phone buzzed in the middle of dinner, I no longer heard just a sound. I heard betrayal knocking on the door. When he left the house late at night, claiming he had urgent work, my chest tightened with suspicion. When he leaned over to kiss my forehead, I wondered if he had kissed her the same way just hours earlier. It was a cruel, suffocating game, pretending to live a life that no longer felt real. But I played along. I became an actress in my own home. I learned to smile at the right times, nod at the right places, laugh when he expected me to. On the surface, I was the same woman I had always been, but inside, I was breaking apart, piece by piece. And yet, my silence was not weakness. It was strategy. While he thought I was blind, I was watching more closely than ever. I studied his excuses, memorized his lies, and searched for the gaps he didn't even realize he was leaving.
Late at night, when he drifted into sleep, I quietly unlocked his phone. My hands shook as I scrolled through messages not meant for me, messages filled with coded words, private jokes, and promises he had no right to make. Each one cut me deeply, but I saved them. Screenshots, photos, receipts, all quietly collected and hidden away like weapons for a battle he didn't even know was coming. Every discovery was another dagger to my chest, but also another brick in the wall I was building, a wall of undeniable truth, because I knew that when the moment came, I would need more than anger. I would need evidence strong enough to destroy every excuse, every lie, every desperate attempt to twist the story in his favor. And so I endured. The conflict inside me grew louder with each passing day. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw the truth in his face and demand answers. But the other part, the stronger part, knew that patience was my greatest weapon. If I confronted him too soon, he would only lie again. He would only find a way to spin the truth, to make me doubt myself. And I refused to let him steal my clarity. So I let him believe I was blind. I remember one evening in particular. We were sitting in the living room, the glow of the TV washing over us. He reached over and took my hand, squeezing it gently, the way he used to. To anyone else, it would have looked like a sweet moment, but I sat there, staring at our joined hands, feeling nothing but emptiness. I wondered if his hand had recently held hers. I wondered if she had felt the same squeeze, heard the same words he once whispered only to me. And I realized then, I wasn't his anymore. Not truly. I was just the woman holding the role of partner while someone else secretly playing the role of lover. The house we shared no longer felt like a home. It felt like a stage, and I was the supporting character in a play he was directing. Every smile he gave me was an act, every kiss was a lie, and I was done being the background in his story. I started to change, too, quietly, carefully. I listened more than I spoke. I watched more than I questioned. I began stepping outside the role he had written for me, because while he thought I was the same trusting woman, I was transforming into someone else entirely. Someone stronger, someone colder, someone ready to turn the tables. The conflict wasn't just between us anymore. It was inside me. Half of me was still grieving the man I thought I loved, the life I thought we had. But the other half was sharpening, hardening, preparing for the day I would no longer play along. That was when I knew. I couldn't save this relationship. I couldn't fix what he had broken, but I could save myself. And when the time was right, I would do more than save myself. I would make sure he never forgot the moment I stopped being his silent, loyal partner and became the one who brought the curtain down on his performance.
It was a Friday night, the kind that should have been ordinary, forgettable, unremarkable. But that night etched itself into my memory like a scar. He told me he had a business dinner. His tone was casual, his words smooth, like he had rehearsed them. He slipped on his freshly pressed shirt, sprayed that cologne he hadn't touched in years, and gave me a smile that felt like a mask. A mask I had seen too many times before. I nodded, pretending to believe him, pretending to accept his story. But inside, my stomach twisted. Something told me this wasn't just another lie I could file away. Something told me this was the night I'd see the truth with my own eyes. When the door closed behind him, I didn't sink into the couch like I usually did. I didn't wait for him to come home with another excuse. Instead, I grabbed my coat, my keys, and a strength I didn't even know I had. I wasn't going to let this night slip into silence. I followed him. My hands shook as I drove through the streets, headlights painting lines across the empty road. Every red light felt like a punishment, every turn a question of whether I should keep going. But I did. Because I needed more than suspicion. I needed something undeniable. I trailed him into the city, keeping my distance, my heart pounding harder with every mile. Finally, he stopped. The glow of a restaurant sign lit up the night as he stepped out of his car, adjusting his collar like a man preparing for a date, not a business meeting. I parked far enough away not to be seen. My breath fogged up the window as I watched him walk inside. For a moment, I thought about leaving, about sparing myself the pain of seeing what I already knew. But some truths demand to be witnessed. I slipped inside the restaurant, careful, quiet, blending into the background. The soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of glasses filled the air. And then I saw him. There he was, seated at a corner table. And across from him, her. She wasn't a mystery anymore. She wasn't just a name flashing on his phone. She was flesh and blood, sitting there with a smile that should have been mine. They leaned toward each other, laughing softly, their eyes locked in a way that told me everything words could not. His hand brushed hers across the table, and in that instant, my heart didn't break. It froze. I stood there, hidden behind a pillar, my body trembling but my mind strangely calm. It was the kind of calm that comes when the storm has already destroyed everything, and there's nothing left to lose. I pulled out my phone. One photo, just one. The shutter was quiet, but the moment was deafening. That image was more than proof, it was freedom. Freedom from doubt, from lies, from the endless cycle of questioning myself. For a second, I imagined walking up to them, slamming the photo on the table, watching his face crumble in front of her. I imagined the gasps, the excuses, the scrambling, but then I stopped. No, that wasn't my moment. Not yet. I turned and walked out, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. My chest ached, my hands shook, but my eyes were dry. I didn't cry, not then. Because what I felt wasn't just heartbreak, it was resolve. I drove home in silence, the photo glowing on my screen like a secret weapon. He had thought he could keep me blind. He had thought his lies would hold. But now, I had seen the truth. And the truth is something you can never unsee. That night, as I lay in bed alone staring at the ceiling, I realized something had shifted in me. I was no longer just the betrayed partner. I was something else now. I was the keeper of a truth that would one day shatter his carefully built facade. And when that day came, he wouldn't just lose my trust. He would lose the image he had worked so hard to protect. That was the night I finally knew. The night my suspicions became certainty. The night my silence transformed from doubt into power. Because betrayal may break hearts, but it also forges strength, and mine was just beginning to harden.
From that night on, everything changed. The truth was no longer just suspicion whispering in the dark. It was a fact etched into my heart, captured in the glow of a single photo. I had seen him. I had seen her. And I had proof. But proof alone wasn't enough. Proof was a weapon. Yes, but a weapon is only powerful if you know how to use it. And I wasn't going to waste mine on a heated argument behind closed doors. No, his betrayal had been carried out in shadows. But my revenge would be revealed in the light. I began to plan, quietly, carefully, piece by piece. Every morning, I smiled when he walked through the door. Every evening, I laughed at his stories, pretending to believe them. On the surface, I was the same partner he had always known. But inside, my mind was spinning, calculating, weaving together a moment that would leave him speechless. I started organizing my evidence. The screenshots of his late-night messages, the receipts from restaurants I had never been to, the hotel confirmations tucked in his emails, and, of course, the photo, the one that captured him leaning across the table, his hand brushing hers in a way that once belonged to me. Each piece was a fragment of truth, and when put together, they painted a picture he could never deny. And then, fate offered me the perfect stage. He announced one evening that he would be hosting a dinner. A big one, he said. Colleagues, business partners, even a few close friends. He wanted me there, dressed in my best, standing beside him as a picture-perfect partner he paraded before the world. I remember nodding, hiding the flicker of satisfaction in my eyes. This was it. This was a night. But revenge isn't just about the moment, it's about the preparation leading up to it. I spent days rehearsing my role. I told myself over and over, don't break character. Smile when he smiles. Speak when spoken to. Let him believe, right until the last second, that he was still in control. Because the greater the illusion, the sharper the fall when it shatters. I picked out my dress with care. Not too bold, not too quiet, just enough to stand out when the spotlight inevitably turned my way. I styled my hair, painted on the kind of confidence that comes from knowing a secret no one else in the room knows. And with every detail, I reminded myself, this wasn't about looking good for him. This was about owning my stage. The night of the dinner arrived, and I watched him transform into the man everyone thought he was. The perfect host, the charming storyteller, the man with the enviable life. He shook hands, shared jokes, poured drinks, and flashed that same mask of a smile I had seen too many times before. To them, he was flawless, untouchable, but only I knew the cracks in his mask. And only I had the power to break it in front of them all. As the evening went on, I waited. I let him bask in the attention, let him soak in the admiration of the people he was so desperate to impress. And all the while, I held my phone in my hand, the evidence just one touch away from being revealed. My heart raced, not with fear, but with anticipation. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. He had built his image on lies, and I was about to bring the truth crashing down on top of him. And yet, even as I stood there, calm on the outside but burning on the inside, I asked myself one question. Would I really do it? Would I expose him in front of everyone? Strip him of the life he had carefully constructed? The answer was yes, 1,000 times yes, because betrayal has consequences. And that night, he was about to learn that dinner wasn't just a gathering. It was a stage I had been waiting for. And when the curtain fell, it wouldn't be me standing in the wreckage, it would be him. The plan was set. The pieces were in place. All I had to do was wait for the perfect moment, and when it came, he wouldn't just lose me. He would lose the image he valued more than love itself. The dinner was in full swing. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and the air carried the sweet aroma of dishes I could barely taste. I sat at the long table, surrounded by polished silverware and polished smiles. But my eyes were fixed on him, watching, waiting. He was in his element, standing tall at the head of the table, telling stories that painted him as a perfect man. His colleagues leaned in, captivated. His friends chuckled at his jokes. And I sat there, smiling just enough to keep the illusion alive. But inside, my heart beat like a drum. Not with nerves those had left me days ago. This was something else. This was anticipation, building, swelling, ready to burst. Because I knew that in just a few minutes, his perfect picture would collapse before their very eyes. He poured himself another glass of wine, his hand brushing mine as if nothing were wrong. As if I were still his, as if the woman from the photograph didn't exist. And in that moment, his casual touch became the spark that lit the fire in me. I straightened in my seat, cleared my throat softly, and let my smile fade. The chatter around the table dipped as eyes shifted toward me. He paused mid-sentence, looking at me with mild confusion, a flicker of annoyance, maybe even fear. He didn't know yet, but he sensed it. Something was about to happen. Since we're all here tonight, I began, my voice steady, calm, almost too calm. I think it's the perfect moment to share something important, something that deserves to be seen, not hidden. The room went quiet. Fork stopped midway to mouths. Even the soft background music seemed to hush itself. He forced a laugh, trying to break the tension. Darling, what are you talking about? He asked, the practiced warmth in his tone cracking at the edges. I looked directly at him, my tired yet determined eyes locking onto his. I'm talking about the truth. With one slow, deliberate motion, I lifted my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen as I pulled up the photo. The glow lit my face as I turned it outward, showing everyone gathered around the table. There he was caught in the frame, leaning toward her, his hand brushing hers with that same tenderness he once reserved for me. The woman beside him smiled, unaware she was frozen in the evidence that would undo him. Gasps rippled through the room. Colleagues glanced at one another, whispering. Friends shifted uncomfortably, their admiration for him dissolving into disbelief. And he went pale, the blood draining from his face as though I had drained the very life from him. This, I said firmly, my voice cutting through the silence, is the man you all think you know. This is what happens behind the perfect stories he tells, he stammered, reaching across the table. It's not what it looks like, but I pulled the phone back before he could touch it, my voice sharp now. It is exactly what it looks like. And I am done pretending. The mask he had worn for so long shattered. His colleagues avoided his gaze. His friends shifted, some whispering to their partners, others staring at their plates. The weight of their judgment pressed down on him, and for the first time in years, he wasn't in control of the room. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the floor. My hands didn't shake, my voice didn't waver. I looked around the table, at the faces watching, judging. And I spoke not just for myself, but for every person who has ever been betrayed by someone they trusted. I gave him everything, my love, my trust, my loyalty, and this is how he repaid me. Behind my back, with lies, with deceit. So tonight, I'm done. I won't stay silent. I won't play the part he wrote for me. He wanted to show you his perfect life. Well, now you've seen the truth. The silence was deafening. He sank into his chair, his confidence gone, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to find words that wouldn't come. For a man who had always known what to say, tonight he was speechless. I walked away from the table, my steps steady, deliberate, final. I didn't need to slam the door or raise my voice. The truth had already spoken louder than I ever could. Behind me, I heard the low murmur of voices, colleagues questioning, friends whispering, his world unraveling piece by piece. And at the center of it all sat the man who thought he could hide forever. That night, the tables truly turned. He lost the image he had clung to, the admiration he craved, the power he sought untouchable. And I walked away with something far greater than revenge. I walked away with my freedom, my dignity, my silence finally broken. He wanted to control the story. But in the end, the story was mine.
When I stepped out of that dinner hall, I remember the cool night air brushing against my skin like a quiet reminder. It's over. For the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't carrying his lies on my back. I wasn't dragging the weight of suspicion or silencing the voice inside me that had been begging to be heard. My chest rose and fell with a strange, new rhythm. A rhythm of freedom. Behind me, the muffled sounds of voices still carried through the doors. I knew what they were saying. I knew the looks on their faces, the judgment, the pity, the whispers that would follow him into every meeting and every room for years to come. But that wasn't my burden anymore. That was his. I walked slowly down the steps, heels clicking against the pavement, each step a declaration. I'm leaving this behind. I'm not turning back. It's strange, the things you notice when you finally let go. The city lights shimmered brighter. The air smelled sharper, cleaner, like rain even though the sky was dry. My hands, which had once trembled at the thought of confrontation, hung still and steady at my sides. And in the quiet of that moment, I realized something simple but powerful. I wasn't broken. Yes, I had been betrayed. Yes, I had been hurt in ways I never thought possible, but I was still standing, stronger than before. In the days that followed, I felt the echoes of that night everywhere. Friends called to check in, some apologizing for not seeing the signs, others congratulating me for my strength. His colleagues tried to distance themselves, as if pretending they hadn't once admired him would erase their discomfort. And him? He tried in his own desperate way to reach me, calls, messages, empty apologies that rang hollow the second I read them. But I didn't answer. Not once, because I finally understood that forgiveness wasn't mine to give. Not for him. Forgiveness was something I owed myself, for staying too long, for doubting my worth, for silencing my own truth. I focused on rebuilding, slowly, patiently, day by day. I poured energy back into the parts of myself I had neglected, my work, my passions, the friends who had stood by me. I started running again in the mornings, feeling the burn in my lungs remind me that I was alive, that I could move forward. I redecorated my apartment, painting the walls brighter, filling the space with laughter and music instead of silence and suspicion. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. There were nights I lay awake, replaying his words, his excuses, the way he looked at me when the mask finally fell. There were mornings I wondered if I had been enough, if I had done something wrong to deserve it. But each time those thoughts came, I reminded myself his choices were not my fault. His betrayal was his weakness, not mine. And slowly the ache dulled. The fire that had fueled my revenge softened into something warmer. A quiet pride that I had faced the storm and walked through it. One evening, weeks later, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My hair was loose, my eyes a little tired but brighter than they had been in years. And I smiled. Not the forced smile I used to wear, but a genuine one, born from strength and survival. That's when I knew I wasn't just walking away from him. I was walking toward myself, and maybe that was the greatest revenge of all. Not the exposure, not the shock, not the whispers left in his wake, but the simple fact that I was free. Free to live, free to love again one day, free to write a story that wasn't built on lies. Because sometimes the most powerful ending isn't about destroying the other person. It's about choosing yourself. And that night, when I walked away from the ashes of what he burned, I chose me. Looking back now, I realize that betrayal isn't just about the person who hurt you. It's about what you choose to do with the silence it leaves behind. For so long, I had lived in silence. I had swallowed my doubts, silenced my instincts, and convinced myself that staying quiet was the same as staying strong. But silence can be dangerous. It can protect lies as much as it can protect hearts. And the longer you carry it, the heavier it becomes. The night I revealed the truth wasn't just about exposing him. It was about ending my silence. It was about reclaiming my voice, my story, and reminding myself that I deserved to be heard. Because betrayal steals more than trust. It steals confidence, hope, even the way you see yourself. And if you let it, it can convince you that you are powerless. But here's the lesson I carry with me now. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a choice. And when you finally decide to break it, when you finally let the truth out, silence transforms into strength. I learned that revenge isn't always about watching someone else fall. Sometimes it's about rising on your own terms. My revenge wasn't just the moment I showed that photograph, it was the months that followed. When I rebuilt myself from the ground up, when I learned to smile without faking it, when I filled my life with things that made me feel whole again. If there's one thing betrayal taught me, it's this: people can shatter your trust, but they cannot shatter who you are unless you let them. And so, to anyone who has ever been betrayed, who has ever carried secrets not meant for their heart, I want you to hear me clearly. You are stronger than you think. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to speak your truth. And you are allowed to begin again. In the end, the silence I once feared became my greatest teacher. It showed me the cost of staying quiet for too long, but it also revealed the power of breaking free. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real story here. Not the betrayal, not even the revenge, but the lesson that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to choose yourself, speak your truth, and let the silence turn into strength.